The AFC East are turning into some beasts, man. Davante Adams has been traded to the New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills respond with a wide receiver of their own, Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns to the Buffalo Bills. Aaron Rodgers reunites with an old friend, Davante Adams. The trade feels like it's been in the works for quite some time. And I'm going to talk about why I love both of these trades, which trade I think will be more impactful to the NFL this season, to the AFC East as a division, and to the AFC as a whole. I will give you all my thoughts on how each player fits in each offense with both quarterbacks and how this makes the Jets and the Buffalo Bills better teams this season. Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL news, reactions, just like this. These two trades are both rentals based on the contracts for both receivers. They are both 1 year, one go, one final push towards a Super Bowl run this season. Both players do not have guaranteed money or extensions beyond 2024-2025, which makes these trades rentals. Therefore, the trade capital is not going to be through the roof for either trade. But in fact, we'll actually dive into why both teams might have received pretty fair compensation when we're talking about the Cleveland Browns and we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. All right. So yeah, we got some people in the chat now. I'm going to start with Davante Adams. That was the first trade of the day. Shout out to Tong. Shout out to Brandon. Shout out to Rob. Thanks guys for joining. Dakota is pumped about his Jets. Let's get started, man, with Davante Adams. So, the Davante Adams trade sends the All-Pro, Pro Bowl, all-time Green Bay Packer wide receiver back to his favorite quarterback in New York, Aaron Rodgers. Davante Adams and the Jets. This feels a little bit like a panic move because right after they lose a Monday Night Football game, all of a sudden they're trading for a wide receiver. It does somewhat feel that way to me, but I don't get that sense. I think ultimately I've been somebody that's been more positive about the Jets all offseason, more positive about the Jets this season, and honestly, I've been looking at their results, especially lately, and I've been impressed with their games. I've been impressed with their offense. I've been impressed with how competitive they've been against good football teams like the Vikings and like the Bills. And I felt like in both of those games, they could have won if a few things went their way. So I honestly look at the recent performances, and I don't think that's a reason to be discouraged. That's actually why I was kind of shocked about Robert Saleh getting fired, because I sat there and I was like, why would you fire a guy after he loses to the Vikings in London, an undefeated Vikings team? And you could honestly sit there and say the reason you lost is probably because of the quarterback turning the ball over. That was ultimately a little bit head-scratching from a coaching decision standpoint. And it just takes one mind away from your game planning, one mind away from your defense that honestly on Monday night looked like the worst unit. The Jets offense now might be the unit that's actually carrying them towards success towards the end of this season, because right now the Jets defense looks pretty basic, pretty average, pretty mid. So honestly, a warranted move is just adding more firepower to Aaron Rodgers and this offense, which is Davante Adams. Now, let's give the trade details here real quick. Just pull up the tweets. So we have the Jets and the Raiders agreeing to a conditional third-round pick that can become a second-round pick. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard, and the chat can help me out here, what the condition is on this, but this is according to ESPN and Adam Schefter, the GOAT. So it can become a second-round pick. I'm not exactly sure what the conditions are on that. I don't know if that means he has to like sign long-term with the team. That's what the condition is. I don't know if the condition is like the amount of yards and touchdowns that he has. I don't know if the condition is the length of the Jets season, like how far they go in the playoffs. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's a variety of things, but that's the overall trade, as we see a pretty sweet edit there of Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, of course, fired up to have his favorite receiver, Davante Adams. And we even saw both of the guys on Pat McAfee looking very happy as Davante Adams popped into the screen behind Aaron Rodgers. So that was a pretty cool moment to watch. Back to full screen. So Davante Adams, what does he bring to the Jets? So I really liked this move in theory because I think it does a variety of different things for the Jets. First of all, Aaron Rodgers and his offense is going to be his offense. And Aaron Rodgers' passing game, which is a West Coast, pretty vanilla style of attack, he doesn't like to utilize a lot of motion. He doesn't like a lot of play action, although he'll utilize both of those things in a very small amount. Things that often are kind of like easy buttons in offenses, play action, motion, things like that, Aaron Rodgers doesn't really love. He does typically like more of a static look. He likes to be in the gun, and he likes to be able to see the defense and pick his matchups. Kind of similar to a Peyton Manning, right? So when you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, he likes to go to his bread and his butter. And that is, in my opinion, timing, that is precision, that is matchups, and that is being able to spread the field with a variety of weapons and picking his one-on-ones and feeding his playmakers the ball quickly, efficiently, and on time. And with Davante Adams, you have a wide receiver who is obviously well-equipped to get open early in the route. He is very good at the line of scrimmage. He can release off the line still at a very high level. He is a very good, crisp route runner at, I would say, the short and intermediate levels of the field, especially the intermediate level of the field. And he can every once in a while pull out a double move or a head fake, a shake, and a bake in order to get down the field. He's not the fastest. He's not the most explosive, but he is very smooth, and his ability to change speeds and his ability to route somebody up down the field, I still think has been showcased with the Raiders over the last 2 years. That being said, I think what Adams brings to Rodgers more than any receiver I've ever seen him play with is body control, the unique sense of having a timing with Rodgers that I just don't think can be defended. In Green Bay, there were plays where honestly, like you would look at, let's just say, a lot of people would say Adams was the best receiver for a period of time in the NFL. And I think a lot of it, and what I would kind of counteract with that, and what I would say to kind of like, because I would often say, oh, Tyreek Hill is better. Tyreek Hill is more explosive. Tyreek Hill creates more big plays. Tyreek Hill is the better player, whatever. Like, let's just put that out there, okay? Davante Adams, the reason that people would say this is because Rodgers would continuously target him, and there would be these plays where, like, it's a back shoulder fade where the ball is perfection, the timing, the choice to turn his body at the absolute right moment to catch that ball is perfect. And Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers just have this like sync where they like, no matter what the route is, they'll throw it a certain way that is like indefensible. So it's this unique chemistry between quarterback and wide receiver that almost can go off script within any play and make any offense and any scheme and any play work and operate. So that is what I think Davante Adams brings Aaron Rodgers more than anything. Even if Adams is not the same player he used to be, just that unique sense of timing, that unique sense of chemistry is just so good between these two players. It's kind of like Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, even at the end of their careers, where, yeah, Gronk wasn't the same Gronk, but he still had great chemistry with Tom, where there were like big plays in big games where they were able to connect for big plays. So with Davante Adams, I still think he's a very good player. I don't think he's the player that he used to be. I wouldn't say he's a top 10 receiver, but I do think that he's still a number 1 receiver. And I think what this also does is have Davante Adams be able to take pressure off of Garrett Wilson. There's been a lot of pressure on Garrett Wilson this season. And the last couple of games, Rodgers and Wilson have been connecting pretty well. And I think Wilson, this actually allows him to maybe move around a little bit more, play in the slot, put him in the backfield, have him almost utilized as like a Randall Cobb-esque player where he can be used as a mismatch all over the field, a move receiver, a Z receiver, while Davante Adams becomes the big X receiver of the offense. He's always on the outside. He's winning against press coverage. He is the guy that is, running the big slant. He's the guy that's running the deep dig route. He's the guy that's running the comeback. He's the guy that's running the out, like those back shoulder fades. He's the red zone threat, but Garrett Wilson is kind of that move the chains, yak threat that I think he is actually very efficient at being. So I could see how those two kind of are able to work off of each other. And then I think Allen Lazard is that third receiver where he's the big-bodied receiver. He can play inside or outside. Preferably, I think he's still better on the inside, but that's just my opinion. He's actually played really well in contested situations this year, and him and Rodgers just seem to have, again, a very good rapport. So now Rodgers has a bunch of receivers within this offense that, like I said, is very kind of vanilla, very basic, not super schematic, not like, a Shanahan type of offense out there where these guys are wide open. This is a lot dictated on accuracy, on precision, on timing, and having those mismatches out there, it really increases the level of this offense. Having better receivers in this offense, as we've seen throughout Rodgers' career, the better his receivers are, the almost better you see Rodgers play. If you look at like 2010, 2011, when he had like Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson and Donald Driver and all these guys like down the list, they had like 4 or 5 receivers that were sick, right? And then you went through those years, 2014, with Cobb and Nelson and etc. And you look at all his MVP seasons almost, and you kind of look at what the weapons have been there. So the only time I feel like Rodgers hasn't had amazing receivers when he's played at his best was those kind of like Matt LaFleur seasons where Matt LaFleur was able to upgrade the scheme, and they were very run heavy. They were very run focused, but Rodgers was able to be very efficient with his throws, and that was thanks to Davante Adams in a large part. So, Davante Adams, man, still good. I think he's going to make the Jets. I think the Jets, like I said at the beginning here, I think the Jets are a good team. Like I know they're 2-4 or whatever, but I don't look at their record and say that's really how good they are. Like they've lost barely to the Bills. They lost barely to the Vikings. They obviously had to play the Niners in San Francisco on Monday Night Football. They hammered the Patriots. They beat the Titans, which are not good teams, but they took care of business. And I feel like they've kind of faced a little bit of a rough schedule. But I think if the defense just plays average football, which I think they're capable of, I think that with Rodgers playing the way that he's playing, maybe a little bit more turnover prone than we've seen in years past, but still very accurate. I mean, the ball still comes out fast. The ball still comes out hot and heavy. The ball is he makes a lot of awesome throws weekly. He still has control at the line of scrimmage. It feels like the play calling, I haven't minded the play calling all year. I feel like it's been solid all season. Davante Adams right now, in 3 games, he's had 209 yards on 18 catches and a touchdown. He has missed the last few weeks due to a hamstring injury. That's something to monitor. I don't know if the hamstring injury is just him trying to get traded. I don't exactly know why that is. But, you look at the seasons with Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers, and you look at that 2018 through 2021 stretch where he had 111 catches, 115 catches, 123 catches, 18 touchdowns, led the NFL. Yards per game in 2020 led the NFL, 98.1. You're probably not going to get that, but that just speaks to kind of their chemistry and their ability to click. And I think again, having Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, essentially 2 number 1 receivers out there, is going to change this team. I think they're going to be capable of moving the ball through the air. I think they're going to be capable of scoring more points. With the way that the defense is looking right now, which I think is shakier than anyone would have expected, thanks to the defensive line losses that they've sustained this season, not having Hassan Reddick come to this team and provide a pass rush, right? Losing Jermaine Johnson, CJ Mosley being injured at times, Quinnen Williams maybe not playing his best football, Sauce Gardner maybe not playing his best football, and then Robert Saleh now being fired, I do think actually hurts the defense. I think with the defense kind of taking a step back, the offense needed to take a step forward. Can the defense find its way back to being, flirting with the top 10 unit alongside having a Jets offense that offensive line has been fairly average in my opinion. They give up some sacks, some pressures, but I don't think it's been bad. I think their run game has actually been fairly solid throughout the season. A little inconsistent, but fairly solid. I thought Breece Hall might have played his best game of the season last week against the Bills. And so they have balance. They can run the football. And now they've got another mismatch on the outside. So you can't kind of overplay the run. You've got to have potentially a lot of two safety looks, which is going to allow the Jets to run the ball. And with Rodgers, he's one of those quarterbacks like Brady, like Breeze, like Manning that he can check at the line. He can find out, okay, so they're playing me this way. There's a lot of room up front. We can run this ball here. I can check into a run. I can audible into a run. We can pick up 5 or 6 yards on the ground. That's going to set us up for 2nd and 4. Now we can take a shot on 2nd and 4. Maybe it's incomplete. Maybe it's complete. But then we've got a 3rd and manageable as well. We'll be able to pick that up, right? So the Jets, I honestly thought the play calling was good against Buffalo. The defense needs to play better. Obviously, you're playing Josh Allen. But yeah, I think this was a good trade for the Jets. I think this was warranted. You basically you traded all these picks for Aaron Rodgers. You spent on Aaron Rodgers. This team is all about Aaron Rodgers. You want to try to capitalize as much as possible on Aaron Rodgers. And the best way to do that is bring in weapons that he's comfortable with, bring in weapons that he loves, bring in players around him that believe in him and that he believes in. And that's the best way to go about supporting a veteran quarterback, just like Tom Brady and the Bucs when they brought in Gronk. And it wasn't as expensive as Adams, but they brought in Gronk. They brought in AB. They brought in Leonard Fournette. Guys that Brady himself was like, let's go get this guy. Let's add to our team. Let's add to our offense. They already had Godwin. They already had Evans, right? Like the Jets, they already have Garrett Wilson. They already have Breece Hall. But they can go out and they can get better, right? You can always get better. So with this being a 1-year deal, I don't think that Adams will end up being a Jet in 2025 unless Rodgers is there, which I'm not 100% sure he will be. I don't know how much longer Rodgers is actually going to play, but I don't know how that would work out in terms of the money. But regardless, this is a move for right now. This is a move for this season. And I think this makes the Jets a legitimate threat in their division. And I think this makes the Jets a legitimate threat in the AFC. Because I look at the landscape of the AFC. The Ravens are good. I don't think they're insurmountable. Their defense is definitely suspect against the pass. And again, you just acquired a receiver. Their offense is very run heavy. And I feel like if you can get ahead of them, you can force them to pass a little bit more from drop back scenarios. I think you can attack them. The Chiefs are very flawed, despite having great coaching and a great quarterback. They have limited weaponry right now without Rashee Rice. Their tackle situation is a bit suspect. Pacheco is injured. The defense is good. There's no doubt about it. But I feel like, again, against a team like the Chiefs were able to make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl last year because they were able to take away teams with multiple weapons. They were able to cover very, very well. They don't seem to have that same ability at that corner position. And a team like the Jets acquiring another man-to-man beater who's had success against the Chiefs, that's the move to make. Again, so like the Chiefs are the favorite. You've got the Bills, who we're going to talk about. The Bengals are not as good as we might have expected. And then otherwise, the Texans, I think, are going to be really good by the end of the year. But the Texans can be had in the secondary. So if you can add another receiver, another guy that can win one-on-ones against Houston, right? Houston maybe has one good corner, but besides that, they're a little bit thin at the corner position. They do have a very good pass rush. You're going to have to get a pass rush on CJ Stroud to beat them. But you look at the contenders, and again, having another legitimate weapon is it changes the way that teams play you. It changes your offense. And I think it changes the prospects of the Jets. Again, remember, these teams with, quarterbacks that just came to the team that are learning the system, learning the players, learning the personnel. And I know Rodgers was there last year, but he didn't play last year. These teams take time to get going. And the one thing of concern for the Jets is I don't know about their coaching. I've said that all offseason. I said that last year. Robert Saleh being fired honestly doesn't really help me in that regard. And then on top of that, I don't know where this defense is at. I feel like the defense has been underwhelming, but I do believe the defense has enough talent to at least get to like a top 12 level. And in that case, if you can combine that with a top 10 offense and a top 12 defense, I feel like you can be as good as anybody in the AFC and have a shot in every game, which is exactly what the Jets want. They want to be able to make the playoffs. They want to be able to have a shot. And that's what I think they're aiming for. I'm not picking them to win the Super Bowl, but this trade definitely increases that chance. I felt like before this trade, it would have been pretty slim. The way that, the defense has been looking, the O-line being a bit up and down, Rodgers being a bit up and down. But what this does is this also increases the consistency of Rodgers because he has another weapon that's going to get open and make plays for him in contested situations. So, yeah, I mean, big move in the AFC East. JC says, breaking news, Amari Cooper is a Buffalo Bill. We, of course, know this. We're going to talk about this in a second. So that's my thoughts on Davante Adams, guys. Salary cap, things like that, doesn't matter. They restructured the contract. It's not a big deal. He's not signed long-term, so it's not really even a factor. They traded for him. They restructured his contract. It ultimately is a third-round pick that is conditional to become a second-round pick. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts on that. If you haven't already, we got 62 people in here. Jump in the chat. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. And let me know what you think about the Jets. Do you think they'll make the playoffs? Do you think they'll win the AFC East? Do you think they'll do damage in the playoffs? Let me know in the chat. Christian asks a question, so I'm going to get to this question before we get to the Buffalo Bills and Amari Cooper, which I'm very excited about. Christian says, Steelers need to go get D-Hop or Christian Kirk. Honestly, they will have a better chance of landing those receivers. Also, the Steelers never had a chance to get Davante Adams. He was a Jet since the trade request. Man, Christian, I think you're a Steelers fan, so I'm going to be nice. I don't think the Steelers should really be breaking their back to get a receiver. I understand that this will help them maybe make the playoffs or something, but I just don't see the Steelers as a legitimate threat because they don't have a quarterback. They just don't have a quarterback. So they have Russell Wilson. Maybe he'll increase their passing game. Maybe if you see something out of Russell Wilson this week or next week, you could maybe make that trade for a receiver. DeAndre Hopkins would be interesting. I do agree with that, especially with Russ. But, I think the defense is very good. I don't think it's, phenomenal to the degree where you can carry a team through a playoff run. I think the run game has been suspect. The O-line is injured. I think the Steelers are a team that they've got a strong culture. They've got a very good defense. I just don't see them being a legitimate threat. So for that reason, I wouldn't really be pursuing trading away a huge amount of draft capital and things like that could help you get the next quarterback on your team. Because I think ultimately the Steelers should be searching for the next quarterback, or they should at least be lining themselves up to get a veteran quarterback or something to that degree in the near future, because Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, not it, especially not Justin Fields. There's people that are mad out there that they sat Justin Fields and they're going with Russell Wilson. You know why they're doing that? First of all, Justin Fields has played very poorly the last couple of weeks. I thought he played decent at the start of the year, but the last 2 weeks he's played very poorly. That, on top of the fact that the Steelers are probably looking at this thing like, if we don't play Russ now before the trade deadline, we don't really know what we're going to have in terms of, can we make a move? If Russ can recapture a little bit of his older form, a little bit of his younger form, maybe we can pursue a trade for somebody, and that would actually help us be an interesting team in the AFC, right? So with the Jets, with the Bills, it's different. Aaron Rodgers, we've seen enough glimpses that the old Aaron Rodgers is there. With the Bills, they've got Josh Allen. who might be in any given game the best player in the NFL. So it's a little bit different in terms of those situations. For me, I just never saw why the Steelers would, why a receiver would want to go to the Steelers with their quarterback play and with the way that they're kind of structured. But I also kind of see it from a Steelers lens. Like, why are we even, like, we're okay. We're not phenomenal. So that's just the way I see it. But maybe Russell Wilson, I still will give hope that Russell Wilson, maybe, because we haven't seen him yet, maybe he can unlock something that Fields didn't. And perhaps that's why they're going with him now, so they can see that, right? Okay, let's get to Amari Cooper. First, pulling up the information. The Buffalo Bills. It's time to be excited about a potential Super Bowl run. This trade is even bigger and better, in my opinion, than the Jets dealing for Davante Adams. Why? Because the Bills have been so close to a Super Bowl run, so close to a Lombardi trophy, which has been elusive throughout their franchise's history. It's eluded them through the 90s and in recent seasons. And with Josh Allen, you've always got a chance. And now you give Josh Allen a legitimate separator, a legitimate route runner, a legitimate outside perimeter receiver that can get down the field, can be explosive. We'll talk about that aspect of his game and that being so big to this offense. Something that Stephon Diggs lost last season. And if you even watch Stephon Diggs now in Houston, he's used a lot as an underneath chain mover receiver, a lot like Khalil Shakir is currently in Buffalo. Amari Cooper is a different element. He is a 10 to 20 yard route runner. He is a off the line, one-on-one toast your corner and beat him down the field. And yes, he's a little bit older. He's 30 years old. But the thing about Cooper is that he's been to multiple places. And everywhere he's been, he's at least shown one season where he's been highly productive. He was a phenom coming out of college. He was one of the best prospects that people had studied at wide receiver out of Alabama. He went to the Raiders. He was very good with the Raiders with Derek Carr. He goes to the Cowboys. He was very good with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. He goes to Cleveland. And when given quarterback play, he was good with Cleveland. Last year, very good with Cleveland. And he's always been a little undervalued because he has not been seen as a legitimate top 5, top 10 receiver ever, but he's always been in that like 25 through 11 range. And at times, maybe even flirted with the top 10. But Amari Cooper traded to the Buffalo Bills and gives the weapon that could unlock the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl run. Let's take a look at the trade details for Amari Cooper. So, the Bills, they trade a 3rd and a 7th round pick right here. A 3rd and a 7th round pick. There we go. That's the better screen. A 7th and a 3rd round pick. 2025 and 2026. So a 3rd in 2025, a 7th in 2026 for Amari Cooper and a 2025 6th round pick. So they actually move up around late in the draft next year. And they are, sorry, I was looking at it wrong. Botching this. The 2025, they move down 3 rounds from the 3rd to the 6th. And then the Browns also get a 7th round pick right there. So essentially a little bit less for what Davante Adams went for. Of course, there is no conditional element to this trade, I don't believe. So this comes straight from the Buffalo Bills X account. Amari Cooper is a Buffalo Bill with the exclamation points. Cleveland initially acquired Amari Cooper, I believe, for a 5th round selection, if I'm not mistaken. And that was seen as an awful trade by the Dallas Cowboys. But we won't talk about the Dallas Cowboys. They're an absolute mess. I do think this is more in line with what Amari Cooper is worth. Why? Well, let's take a look at Amari Cooper's numbers here. Amari Cooper, so far this season, has not had an amazing stretch. He only has 24 catches for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? But last year, 72 catches in 15 games, 1,250 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The key number to look at is 17.4 yards per reception. That is the number to look at. 17.4 yards per reception. He also had 83.3 yards per game, which is a darn good number. So this is a downfield threat last year with Joe Flacco. Now you give him a big-armed quarterback like Josh Allen. I think that will help unlock his downfield game that's been missing this year, going down to 10.4. Why? Because Deshaun Watson's the worst quarterback in the NFL. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Deshaun Watson is awful. Okay? Then you look at that before. So not only was it a 1-year run in Cleveland, but 2 years. 1,160 yards with 78 catches in 2022 and 9 touchdowns. That was also 14.9 yards per reception. So Cleveland clearly used him as more of a downfield target than he was actually being utilized in Dallas, where he had, 12.1, 12.7, more of a intermediate threat, which I think also fits Dak Prescott's game a little bit better. But again, like I talked about with Amari Cooper, right? 1,100, 1,200 in Cleveland, year 28, 29 seasons, right? So that's one team he had success with. You look at Dallas. Dallas, in 9 games, 725 yards. Then after that, he had 1,100, and then kind of a injured season, 865, where he had a little bit of a dip there, but he had 8 touchdowns. So pretty much 2 1,000-yard seasons with Dallas at 25-26, 2 1,000-yard seasons in Cleveland, 3 1,000-yard seasons in Oakland/Dallas at the end there, so 1,005 yards. But he started his career with 1,000 and 1,100 at the start of his career. So pretty much like the guy has had multiple 1,000-yard seasons in every place that he's ever been, as Pro Football Reference keeps trying to combine my stats there. He is currently 30 years old. He is a 5-time Pro Bowler. Okay? He was the 4th overall pick, which actually even higher than I thought he went in 2015. So he's always been seen as an elite player. And the skill set for Amari Cooper is, I think, a really, really, really good route runner. Really good, kind of like Davante, really good at the line of scrimmage, really good variety of releases, his ability to use quick feet, to be able to get separation, and then even to be able to, I think, get down the field and see the football and be able to track the football down the field very well along the sidelines. He's not the biggest yak threat in the world. I would say that's probably his weakness. Cooper is more of a route runner, separate, create that separation for his quarterback, get open, catch the football, and secure the football. He is not somebody that is going to, like Deebo Samuel, catch a screen, make 3 people miss, and run for a 25-yard, 30-yard gain. He is a crisp, at the top of the route, separate with quickness and speed, and catch the football. Okay? So, and why I think this is the type of skill set that Buffalo needed. When you look at Buffalo's current wide receiver depth chart, they've got Keon Coleman, a rookie, who's big-bodied, physical, a good blocker, really good hands in contested situations. Cannot get open. He could not get open against, pretty much 99% of corners right now in the NFL. He cannot separate, okay? And separation is my favorite skill in a wide receiver. In my opinion, it's the most important skill. The ability to actually be able to one-on-one against a corner in man coverage, get open, okay? Contested catches is inconsistent. Contested catches, you live and die off of it. Sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it doesn't really work out, right? A guy could have amazing hands, but if he can't get open, does a quarterback trust to throw him the football? Because it could be tight coverage. It could be an incomplete pass. It could be worse, interception, right? Amari Cooper, he just has a unique sense for getting open. And I think that on the outside is what was missing for this offense, because Cooper has always primarily been an outside wide receiver who can get down the field and can run intermediate routes. You combine that with Khalil Shakir, who is kind of the same type of player, but he's an underneath player. So he is more of like a Cole Beasley in Buffalo, or like the classic like Julian Edelman type of player. I'm not saying he's quite that good, but I'm just saying underneath a defense, or running crossing routes, or stopping and starting, or being able to win with yak, yards after catch, that is Khalil Shakir's game. So now you have two guys that, in my opinion, can separate and get open against corners. Because before, it was just Shakir. And we saw against the Texans, when they didn't have Shakir, they were toast because their receivers couldn't get open. Now you combine that with Dalton Kincaid, who's got a little bit of yak to his game, who's going to see better matchups because of Amari Cooper on the outside. It's going to loosen up the zone coverages in the middle of the field. And Kincaid is very good at finding those holes in the middle of the field and being able to do damage with the ball. He's a very fluid athlete, right? So I see Kincaid as somebody that this is really going to help. I think, so you have those three options. James Cook is really good out of the backfield, catching the football, as well underneath and yards after catch. So now teams just can't simply line up and play man. Now teams can't simply just, stack the box against your running game, because now you have a guy that can actually get down the field and win. Right? Valdez-Scantling wasn't doing that. Mac Hollins wasn't doing that for this offense. Coleman wasn't doing that for this offense. This Amari Cooper trade gives them a receiver similar to Stephon Diggs like 2 years ago that can actually get down the field and win. Diggs last year and this year, in my opinion, he is more of a short intermediate threat. That's the way I see it. So then you throw in Mac Hollins as like a big-bodied number 4 instead of a number 3, right? Then you kind of move everybody down the depth chart. So you got Cooper at 1, you got Shakir as the slot, you got Curtis Samuel as a do-it-all dimension, who actually I thought played decent against the Jets at the start of the game. You've got Kincaid and you've got Knox at tight end. Both are pretty athletic guys. You have a good running game with James Cook. So now this play action, you can set up some deep crossing routes, some deep balls to Amari Cooper. This just unlocks a layer of the offense that just didn't exist. So to me, that's why this move is probably a bigger deal than the Davante Adams move. Because while Davante Adams makes the Jets go from one good receiver to two legitimately very good receivers, this move takes an already complete offense that was missing a number 1 threat and gives them potentially a number 1 threat. Like a receiver that actually demands a little bit of attention. Like a little bit of attention. You can't always leave Amari Cooper one-on-one like everybody else in this offense previously. You can't play them straight up, because now, Cooper has always been able to win one-on-ones against a lot of good corners in the league. He rarely has ever been shut down in that regard. So as long as he still has that capability, which I believe he does, because last year was one of his best seasons in the NFL, in my opinion, this year, it's all been about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is a plug. Deshaun Watson is a disaster. Deshaun Watson is a bum. Deshaun Watson is a hack. Deshaun Watson is terrible, okay? The inability to get Amari Cooper the ball was strictly because of Deshaun Watson sucking. That's my opinion, okay? And Cooper is also a rental for this season, but I could see him sticking around. And I think the dimension about Amari Cooper that's also, I think, underrated here is his personality. Amari Cooper doesn't talk. Amari Cooper is very quiet. He's just goes about his business. He's never really been a diva. Has he at times been questioned even by me for his toughness? as a player at times in Dallas specifically, but I feel like that was almost a product of Dallas more than Cooper. But I think Cooper, actually playing in Cleveland has toughened him up a little bit because he's had to play in cold environment. He's had to play in bad weather more frequently, which I think has actually made him a more complete, tougher player. But he's quiet. So he's not going to be a guy like Diggs that's always asking for the football. He's going to be like just absolutely like elated that he's on a team with a good quarterback and he's on a good team. Like he was stuck in the dungeon in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson, and now he's with one of the best quarterbacks and one of the best franchises in football. So if anything, you're going to get that much more effort, that much more work ethic from Amari Cooper, who now realizes what's in front of him. An opportunity to play with Josh Allen, who's the best quarterback he's ever played with. With Davante Adams and the prospect of Adams going to Buffalo, I thought was interesting because he does similar things that Cooper does. He wins one-on-one. He gives Josh Allen a potential guy that can win and separate one-on-one. The difference is being, I think that Adams is a little bit more outspoken. Cooper is a little bit more quiet. Cooper is a little bit more to himself. Adams has been very kind of annoying with the Raiders. He's actually become quite a diva with the Raiders. Now, maybe that will stop with the Jets, but because he's with Rodgers now, so maybe that will stop. But he's actually been quite a diva with the Raiders, in my opinion. And the other thing that I think is different between Adams and Cooper that I think is actually better for Josh Allen, I don't think he's as good as Adams in terms of contested catches and in terms of body control and things like that. But I think Cooper is faster. I think Cooper is more explosive. I think Cooper brings speed. When you look at the Bills receiving core, they don't really have speed, vertical speed, right? They tried to get that with Valdez-Scantling, but he can't catch. And, Coleman is not fast. Adams would be a really good number one, but still would allow teams to perhaps play the run a little bit easier without the threat of vertical speed in the offense. So that is also a dimension that I think is a W for the Bills, is bringing Amari Cooper's speed. I like these trades for both teams. I think these trades are awesome for both teams. I think they're going to help both teams. I think the Bills, I'm more excited for the Bills. Like visually, when I saw the trade hit my screen for Buffalo, I was like, wow, that's sick. Like, I legitimately out loud was like, wow, that's awesome. Like, I think I said something to that degree. Like, I looked at my phone, I was like, oh, shit, that's sick. Like, Amari Cooper to the Bills. That's what I was like. I was like, looking at my phone like, shit, I got to make a video now. While with Adams, I was actually, like, asleep because it was super early on the West Coast. But I looked at my phone and I was like, well, that was kind of expected. You know what I mean? I was kind of like, I'm not too surprised. It's not that shocking. I think it definitely helps the Jets. I don't disagree with that. And I'm happy for the Jets because I want to see both these teams in the playoffs because I think both these teams are good for football in a sense. But I think this move for Buffalo takes them from team that I felt like is very good and can play with anybody in the league, but is missing something. And that something to me was wide receiver. You give them a wide receiver, and I think this puts them into, you can win the Super Bowl now. This is the move that you needed to make. That is kind of how I see Buffalo. While I see the Jets as, maybe this is a little bit desperate. I have questions about your coaching staff. I still have questions about, Rodgers, the whole infrastructure of the franchise. I have those questions with the Jets. But I do think that for the Jets, it makes them a legitimate playoff team and a legitimate threat, but with major question marks. With the Bills, it's more like, okay, like I could see you now against the Chiefs. Like the thing with the Bills is like, I actually look at this Bills team and the way that the current Chiefs team is structured, and I kind of see the Bills, and I know a lot of people are going to clown me for this, but I actually think the Chiefs do not match up that well with this Bills team. I think I think the Ravens match up pretty well still with Buffalo. This helps. Cooper helps against the Ravens. But I think the Ravens match up well with Buffalo. But I think Buffalo matches up well with the Chiefs right now. Because they don't have Snead anymore. And I think bringing in Cooper definitely changes the math in terms of those matchups, along with the dimension of their tight ends, the dimension of their running game that they've developed, the dimension of Josh Allen himself being a running threat. So I could see the Bills really moving the ball on the Chiefs in a way that I don't think many teams do. And then on the other side, I just don't think the Chiefs offense is really that great. And I think the Bills defense is going to get healthier, and I think they're going to get stronger. Matt Milano, Von Miller, these guys will be coming back, Ed Oliver, etc. Maybe the Bills need to think about making a safety move, potentially. That might be the other thing that they take a look at is safety. But I think the Bills definitely, this helps them against the Chiefs in particular, I think, more than against other matchups. But the Chiefs are the one that you're trying to surpass, right? The Ravens, I'm still worried about the Bills' run defense in that matchup. The Bengals currently don't have a defense, so I'm not too worried about that, although their offense is really challenging for pretty much every team. And, the Texans will be interesting because the Bills could have beat the Texans. That game was very close. The Bills were very injured, but the Texans also lost Nico Collins. So that would probably be a one-score game either way as well. But what we saw in that game on that tape was a reason to trade for a receiver. When I was watching that game, I'm like, yo, you can't have these guys getting locked up by the Texans secondary, right? So that was a reason to trade for Amari Cooper. That game, I think, screamed, you need a receiver on the tape. It wasn't Josh Allen to me. It was the receivers. And if you have Josh Allen in fantasy, this is a huge dub. Huge dub. I think this really helps Josh Allen in fantasy. Just in terms of consistency. Joshua says Davante is better than Cooper. Defenses can't put 8 in the box against the Jets and leave Adams and Wilson one-on-one. Yeah, I pretty much said that, Josh. Adams is better, I agree. But I think there's things that Cooper brings that I think is better than Adams, like quickness, speed, downfield ability. I think those are the things that Cooper brings that are better than Adams. I think Adams is a better overall player, and obviously he has the chemistry with Rodgers. But when you're talking about the two teams, I think Buffalo is just better equipped to be a contender this year. I do think the Jets are very good, but I think Allen is just maybe that much better than Rodgers right now, but we'll see how it goes. Rob says, and I think to underline that and to reason that, the Bills had like objectively bad receiving core before this trade, like objectively not a good receiving core, while the Jets or the Bills had an objectively bad receiving core, while the Jets had a decent one. Right? Like, you looked at it and you were like, it's decent. It's not catastrophic. The Bills were like, yo, this is like the reason you're not winning these games. Like, this is the reason you lost to the Texans. I don't think I've said all year that the Jets, the reason they've lost is because of their receiver play, if you know what I mean. So that's why I think it's a bigger deal. Ace is, shout out to Ace in the chat. Shout out to Deep Fry. Browns and Raiders. Maybe Deep Fry wants to know about the Browns and Raiders. Well, we could finish off with that. I think the Browns are... It comes down to Deshaun Watson, bro. Like, I would say in terms of fantasy, I think David Njoku is going to get a huge boost for the rest of the year in Cleveland. I would, if you could get him on your team somehow, I would look at that. In terms of the Raiders, I think Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers are definitely interesting. Both teams, the Browns are very disappointing because I feel like their roster is pretty good besides the quarterback position. I still think they should be starting Jameis Winston, although this trade almost gives them more reason to keep Watson in because there's they've almost admitted that they're not winning anything this year or doing anything this year, so you might as well keep Watson in anyways. While the Raiders, I think they're pretty much like rebuilding. I would think about trading Max Crosby, but I probably wouldn't do it if I were the Raiders because I just value Max Crosby too much. I wouldn't do it. If you maybe get a ton of picks, maybe you do that. Colton Miller could also be a guy that could be traded. I think the Raiders are rebuilding. I think the Raiders need to look at head coach, look at quarterback. Like the problem with the Raiders is they don't have a quarterback long term. They don't have a head coach long term. Those are big problems. Do they have some good players on their team? Yes, Brock Bowers, Colton Miller, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. I like certain players on their team. I just think they don't have the two big elements to be successful in the NFL, while the Browns just don't have a quarterback. I think Stefanski's a good coach. It'll be interesting to see how much he gets blamed for the lack of success with Deshaun Watson. Gronk spiked the like button, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. 74 people in the chat till the end. 24 likes. Make sure to get those likes up, guys. Gronk spike the like button. If you're new, subscribe. I will be releasing the cuts for both trades as separate videos for you guys to check out later on. So if you missed the live breakdown of both these trades, I will be releasing both of them shortly today. So make sure to tune into those. And power rankings will be tonight, which is always pre-recorded. I'll have that later tonight than probably usual just because of what I'm doing here with these videos. So thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch, and we'll see you in the next video. Deuces.